Is it on now? Oh, okay. I feel like I need to stand on my tiptoes to be tall enough for this. Welcome. Before we get started, I'm going to have Pastor Melva come up and do a prayer for us.
Pray. Woo. God can really hear us now, can't he? Heavenly and gracious Father, as we stand before you, we ask for your guidance, your direction, your wisdom, that we would say the things that will be helpful to our caregivers, as well as those who are in a caregiving position but have not been a part of Remember For Me. We pray that you will continue to bless this organization to give us what we need to help our fellow man and our community as a whole. We thank you for those who have come out this evening, and we just pray for you to open their hearts that they will receive what it is that you have in store. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
All right, so most of you guys know Julie. However, she's not feeling very well, so you are stuck with me tonight. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Okay. So welcome to our second in the Alzheimer's Known and Unknown seminar series. We are glad that you guys are here. We have several great speakers lined up for you tonight. Does Julie do like an RFM spiel before?
That's what
Did Julie do an RFM spiel?
Just a little.
Before? Okay. So I'm winging it and not doing a very good job. But so we are part of an organization called Remember For Me. We are an Alzheimer's education and support organization here in Hunt County. We have a support group, respite care program. Yes, and the respite care program has 3 different parts. We do lawn care, in-home care, and light housekeeping. We also do fun stuff with our seniors, with our caregivers. We have events, Christmas party, just different things like that. So if you're ever in need of just support, information, questions, or just to have someone to talk to, please reach out to any of us. Most of us here have on a purple RFM shirt. Not me, because I don't know where mine is. But so if you ever see one of those shirts, reach out, ask us. We are here to help in any way that we can. So we have a lot of information to pack into a short time tonight, so we are going to dive right into it. Melva didn't send me a bio, so I tried to find this one from like 3 years ago, but then I realized she's done so much stuff that it's probably not even accurate. But Melva is very well known in the community. She's been involved in just about every nonprofit there is around town, and she is currently a pastor and still works at the flower shop. So she is a very busy lady, but she is here today to talk to us about the stigma of Alzheimer's.
Well, thank you. I didn't expect that. There's some handouts that we're going to pass on to you. As Casey mentioned, we are going to talk about stigma of Alzheimer's and all dementia diseases. It really is a big problem. It's your first hurdle to get over when you realize that something is going wrong with a family member. So last time we did this, we addressed it. Since then, I've gotten a little better at my presentation. So we want to start off with, first of all, defining stigma. Stigma is a mark of disgrace associated with a particular circumstance or situation. We know that that is such a hard thing for us to get past when we find out that there is something wrong. The other thing that we're going to look at tonight is we're going to identify the byproducts of stigma. There are a lot of things that come out of stigma that sometimes we don't even realize that that's part of it, but it does generate these additional things that go on with us when we find out that we have a loved one that is suffering from some sort of dementia. The first one, do we have that up? If you'll move up to denial. Denial is probably the hardest one to overcome because it's something that you just don't want to admit. I had a situation where I had the person that I took care of was my older sister, and probably 2 years before she was ever diagnosed, I recognized some issues that were going on that it just wasn't her. And when I said to my brother-in-law, this is something that you are going to have to address because you are her husband. As her sister, I can say to her what it is she needs to do, but I felt he needed to take charge. And he was in denial. I'm going to do something, but it's going to be okay. But that's the kind of thing that gets you deeper in denial. You have got to fess up and recognize it. We don't want to accept the situation, so we try justifying our actions or lack thereof. It's not that serious. It's just aging, it's stress. And then we just say so many other things that come about. But what we need to do is immediately start seeking professional help. Start seeking some place that can give you some sort of relief. You need to even do your own research. Because there are going to be some doctors that, when I first started this journey, a lot of them did not know enough about dementia or Alzheimer's. My sister was early onset Alzheimer's. And because they didn't know a lot of things, they kind of tagged it as something else, or they didn't really address the problem like it should have been. So when you have a situation like that, sometimes you need to do your own research. You need to find out what's out there that maybe the doctor did not tell you about. So you want to make sure that you try doing everything that you can. The other thing, as I said, we make excuses, an abundant amount of excuses. And making excuses does not make the situation go away. We need to get that quickly, because if you don't, you're going to keep making excuses for your excuses, and it just goes on and on and on, and you never really get a resolution. The second thing that we need to look at is shame. How many of you sat down and wrote a letter and said, Lord, please give my loved one this disease? Okay, so what are you ashamed of? You're not the cause of it. You did not create this situation, but it came about as a result of life. And whatever life hands us, we need to deal with it, one way or another. The old adage says, when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. So that's what we have to do in this situation. I look at the fact that families are asking themselves, how can we share this terrible situation with our family, our friends, our church members, or maintain public interaction? Because you know that sometimes your loved one is going to say something or do something that is very embarrassing. We have some cards out front, I hope they're out there, that say that please excuse my loved one, or please accept what he or she is doing. I thank you for your patience with them. I don't even remember, this has been 2 or 3 years ago, that somebody told us about that kind of card that you can just hand to a waiter, or you can hand it to, or I guess that's not PC anymore, a wait person, or you can hand it to a sales clerk. Any number of people that you interact with in public. When you go to a doctor's office, this just lets those that are around you know that your loved one has some issues that they are dealing with, and they certainly don't need to deal with the issue of you looking at them saying, what's wrong with this idiot? They're not idiots. They have an issue, and that issue they are trying to work through. So we want to make sure to kick the shame to the side. We want to make sure that we do talk to family members. The question is, how can we share this this terrible situation with family? But the question truly should be, when can we share it? Anybody know when you need to share this situation with family and close friends? How about immediately? Because you are going to need help. This is not something that you can do all by yourself. It is a house that takes a lot of contractors to build. And so what you need to do is to stop trying to bear the entire load. And instead, keep this in mind. Don't bear, share. Because when you begin sharing this situation with other people, then the load gets lighter for you. And you can be a better caregiver, or caretaker, I'm sorry. No, it is caregiver now, isn't it? It used to be caretaker. I'm telling you, I don't like PC. I just like to talk like I used to talk, you know? But anyway, the person that is doing the care, how about that? We need to make sure that we are able to do the job that needs to be done. If you are trying to do every single thing and you never ask for help, do you think you're going to last long? So how much good can you be to your loved one? If you are wearing yourself out, if you are so stressed out, if you're just so exhausted that you get to the point where you just don't know what to do. So what I recommend is stop bearing this load of shame and start accepting it. Get out of the denial. Begin to accept it because you have no control over it. The best thing that you can do in this situation is to help your loved one get through the situation. And they are having, that's the other thing that we need to recognize, they're having as hard a time as you are. Actually, they're having a harder time because you're on the outside and you see what they're going through, but you're not on the inside knowing what they're feeling. I had a situation where, as I said, my sister was 13 years older than I am. And she was my big sister, so, I would go to her and say, hey, how do I handle this? This boy so-and-so, or, what am I going to do over here or over there? And she was my person that I could be confident in knowing that she was going to give me the best possible advice that she had. Well, now, I'm the one that's in control, not her. So those roles that you have to suddenly change or swap out or whatever you have to do are difficult sometimes. And one of the hardest ones is when you are a woman and your husband is the one that is dealing with this disease. Because husbands took an oath, a vow, to love, honor, and protect and do all the things that you needed to do, provide the things for you that you need, and now they have to depend on you. That's very hard because they are now in the role of being taken care of as opposed to taking care of someone. Wives, if you're going through that, recognize that. And also, children, the same pretty much goes for parents because your parents have always taken care of you and now you're having to take care of them. And the main thing that you want to make sure that you don't do in the course of you taking care of them, don't take away their dignity. They need that. They desperately need that. My husband became ill. And he was a 21-year Air Force retiree. And, he was the one that always fixed everything and took care of everything. He did not have any form of dementia. He had another dreaded disease. But his circulation, it attacked his circulation and his organs. And I remember one of the saddest nights that I ever dealt with was he was getting ready for bed. He sat down on the side of the bed and tried to get into the bed. His legs had swollen. They looked like little tree trunks. And he looked at me and he said, "Babe, can you please help me?" And I know that hurt him because it hurt me for him to be hurt. So remember, when you are in a reverse role, don't put shame on them, and don't you accept shame, because we got a lot of stuff to deal with as it is, and that should not be one of them. I would also recommend that you tell those people that are closest to you and your family, not just your family, but close friends, church members. You'd be surprised how many of those folks would help you out if you just opened up. So what you need to do is let them know that I can use some help, and if you are willing to offer it, I will accept your help. The next one is guilt. This one is a hard one. We experience guilt for many, many reasons. Why didn't I see this coming? Well, some of us do, but some of us don't. We don't have any doctors in the room, do we? Have any nurses? Okay, a nurse. You may not recognize what this is. Like I said earlier, you sometimes kind of push it off on, well, they're aging. So, it's to be expected. We're going to forget this and that here and there. And just a little test that I saw or heard a woman say once is, if you can't find your keys, which I couldn't find them tonight, so that was a testimony to me that I'm still reasonably all right. But if you can't find your keys, you don't have dementia. But if you don't remember you have keys or a car, you probably do. So just start doing things like that when you have a family member that you think could be headed toward dementia. Just do something, talk with them, and kind of take them through some little exercises to see what position they're in. We also ask ourselves, why am I so ashamed of this situation? As I said, you get back to that shame, you need to lose it. You need to not revert to that shame component, because guilt will bring shame. If you let it work around you long enough, it will. So make sure that those two that you're tying together, let them go play someplace else, because you've got work to do. If you have a loved one that is in need, then you need to be the best that you can be, so that they can be the best that they can be. Another question you might ask is, am I doing all that can be done? We go back to earlier when I mentioned that you need to start investigating on your own. You can Google anything. So I'm almost afraid you could Google, what did I have for dinner last night? Now, Google might not be able to tell you, but Alexis probably can tell you exactly what it was. But, we can find so many things online today. So we need to access those things. And they can give you information in a form that it's not all of the medical words that you've never heard or can't relate to. You can get it in a form that you can understand. So all that you can do is the best that you can do. Some of us can do more than others because we're better equipped. But do all that you can do, and then you have done the best. And don't allow guilt to stay. Now, I have to tell you, all of these feelings are going to come, but you need to usher them out of your lives, because you need to be able to focus on your loved one. You need to be able to focus on the situation. You need to be sure that their surroundings are safe, that they have medications that they're supposed to have, that they're taking their medications when they're supposed to have them, and not abundantly ODing and that kind of stuff. So those are the things that you need to be doing, and making sure of their comfort is at hand. This last one is fear, and we all experience fear. I experienced it. Even though I knew what I was dealing with, I still experienced fear. Because you don't know enough about dementia, discuss it so that you won't become so fearful. Talk it out. I mean, it's real. You know it exists. If you didn't, all of you wouldn't be here tonight. So because of that, talk it out with someone to ease your fears that you are going to be able to overcome. What can I do? Let me ask you this. What would you do if your loved one had the flu? If your loved one had a stroke? If your loved one had a heart attack? You would seek professional help, would you not? 911 would be the first thing in your mind if they could not do what they needed to do. Our 911 most of the time is within. We need to step up and do what they need done. It may not be that you need a paramedic, but we know that there are things that they need, and we need to be the ones to provide that for them. What do I need to do? Seek assistance for not only your loved one, but for you as well. Again, I cannot drive home enough that if you are not what you need to be, they are not going to receive what they need to receive. I had a situation with my sister that I had been in the hospital for 2 weeks, got out. I had to have infusions for 6 weeks after that, and I was trying to do the same things that I was doing for her before and still taking care of myself. Didn't happen. And I told some family members, but I didn't get much of a reaction. But then I later found Remember for Me. And I had someone that I could go to, someone that I could depend on, someone that understood exactly what I was going through, so they knew how to handle it. They knew how to handle me, because I was getting angry and frustrated, and that's two things that you do not want to get with your loved one. When you get there, leave the room. I'll just tell you. You have to do that sometimes. I always like to talk about my sister. I miss her, but I'm glad she's not here to hear me talk about her. But I remember once, she was a smoker, and I had taken her to the doctor to get her appointment, and afterwards I said, okay, do you have any errands you want to run? No. So you sure you don't want to go to the hospital, to the pharmacy? No. Do you need to go to the bank? No. I said, well, what about cigarettes? Oh, I don't need any. I said, how many do you have? She said, checked her pack. Oh, I've got about 6. I whipped into the tobacco store. So I said, how many do you want? And she said, oh, just 3 packs. When I know she smokes a pack a day, it's Tuesday. So I'm thinking, why don't you get a carton? And she said, no. So I said, why not? Because I don't want to. That was bad enough. By Friday, I get this frantic message, I need cigarettes. Well, I had her debit card, so I went back to the tobacco store, and I got what? A carton of cigarettes. I took them to her, and I said, you know what? You can smoke them or eat them. Frankly, I don't care. And I left the room. Sometimes you just have to do some of those things. You don't want to hurt them, but you do want to keep the situation from escalating. Finally, how can I overcome this? With support. That's why Remember for Me is here, in the different facets that we're here. We're doing services that give you some time to breathe and to rest, and to maybe even do some other errands. We are giving you an opportunity in our groups to sit and vent. Because sometimes that's all you need to do is just vent. And then, okay, it's gone, so now I can go back and do what I'm supposed to do. That's the most important thing. Dementia diseases are overwhelming for both of you. It's going to overcome them. Don't let it overcome you. God bless you.
So I don't have to tiptoe. We would just jumped right in, and I forgot all of the housekeeping things. So one of the things that I wanted to say is we are very lucky to have GEUS here actually filming this. So it is streaming live for anybody who couldn't be here, which is funny because Julie, who can't be here, texted me and said that Melva was preaching it. So, but one of the exciting things about that is that after this, our representative from GEUS here mentioned that this will be something that we can send a link or share the link to. So if you guys ever want to go back and listen to any of the information that you have tonight, we will have that capability. So that's pretty exciting. Let's see, housekeeping that I forgot to do in the beginning. If you need to go to the restroom, it is in the very back right here, so you don't have to go wandering the halls. It's in the back. Our friends at Centric brought some snacks, so those are available. This is not a formal thing. You are able to get up, go, do whatever you need to do. Thirsty, hungry, go get a snack. I also want to take a second to recognize our RFM team here. We have Marie at the door. Wave, Marie. Friendly is here, hiding in the back. Danette is here. Melva, who just spoke. If I missed you, let me know. Okay, I think that's all the housekeeping things. So we will move on to our next speaker. So that is Shawn Counsel, who is a local attorney. So I'm going to read this because I don't know you as well as I know Melva. So I may leave some parts out. So I will just say that Shawn is a local attorney, and he has been a huge asset to remember for me. He has spoken at our support groups. He came and spoke at our last seminar series. When it comes to long-term care planning, estate planning, taking care of what needs to be taken care of as your parents age or as you age, just making sure that you're prepared for what the future holds. He has a wealth of knowledge on that. So I am going to turn it over to him.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate it. How about y'all show another round of appreciation for Miss Melva. So that was a very compelling presentation and a lot of wisdom that I heard from this stage tonight so far. So appreciate you all having me again. My name is Shawn Counsel. Like she said, I do run a firm here in town, and we do help with Medicaid and estate planning for long-term care services. Can you not hear? Is that better? Very good. So there's no way that in 30 minutes I could really convey in a way that you would leave here understanding Medicaid or long-term care insurance or everything composed with what you would consider elder law planning. But my goal, hopefully, is to give you some signs and markers on the road and questions to be thinking about and looking for if and when the time comes, because as Melva was explaining and did a very good job of talking about the roles and challenges you're going to face in caring for a loved one, there may eventually come a time in which the home setting is quite simply no longer fair to your loved one, right? It gets to a point to where they can't conform in terms of behavior or have reasonable expectations, and it becomes too burdensome and difficult for you to facilitate that role. And in that regard, an institutional setting becomes, quite frankly, the best place for mom, dad, husband, wife, whoever that is. And in that regard, then, it becomes sometimes one of the most serious legal matters that your family may ever face. And most people don't consider funding for a nursing home a legal matter. But in today's world, it kind of has gotten to that point. So my goal today is to kind of go over in a 30,000-foot view, sort of the three main ways of going about taking care of that need, and some of the things to look for in that regard. So first thing is, when we talk about long-term care, there's essentially three categories. You can use your personal funds, and if you guys are daddy warbucks and you can, self-insure for the cost of a nursing home and still leave a legacy to your greedy, unwashed, undeserving heirs and all the things that you want to do, then this is probably not for you and you can tune out. For everybody else, though, we're going to be looking to maybe hedge our bet and save what we have, or at least make sure that the last check I write bounces, right? And make sure that those funds go to me and what I want to use them for. So that comes down to long-term care insurance, or quite frankly, Medicaid. And we're going to try and take all these up one at a time in stride. So we can go to the next slide. And I'm sorry, I normally would have a clicker and I wouldn't be, it is what it is, right? So y'all bear with me. Why is this important, you think? Well, we're all here, and you certainly know what you're going through, but the statistics are kind of frightening, right? So depending upon who you ask, somewhere between 60 to 75% of all persons who reach age 65 will go into a nursing facility in their lifetime. Of those people, 60% will stay at least 3 years. So the financial impact on that becomes, quite frankly, just expensive. And the reason for that is because the cost of long-term care has risen exorbitantly over the last few years. You drive around town, and it doesn't matter what town, the things they're building are nursing homes, right? And that's because the baby boomer generation has reached the age of necessity for, care. And they know that, and in some ways it's predatory, but that's my opinion, so you can quote me on that, I guess. To give you a little bit of an example, though, I always update this and I bring you some research. We can move on forward a little bit to the next slide, if you would. So in 2020, the national average, right, for a nursing home was about $255 a day. That is a private room rate, and that's the private cost of care, not a Medicaid rate, if you will. The private room was $293 a day as a national average. And I know this is horrible. Y'all probably can't see or read that. But in any way, what I'm getting at is, it's expensive, right? Even home services average about $23.50 an hour in a lot of places through, put somebody to come and help you with ADLs. You're going to need to look at alternative sources of funding, even if you have $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 in the bank, because the money simply won't last anymore. And it's a shame, because what I feel is a disservice is we all know and we're all told during our life, hey, work, save, invest. And what no one tells you is, hey, if you don't take some steps to preserve that, it's all going to be gone because you're going to go to a nursing home, right? That's not fair. And so part of what we try to do is to set up strategies to allow people to, preserve what they've worked for and still get some help financially. If you would, just skip through to, we can go through that too. These were some statistics, but since you can't read it, I don't know that it really means anything to you. So here's the deal. You know, one of the things we do is plan for Medicaid, right? But we also take a lot of time to plan for strategies that would avoid Medicaid, and there's a lot of reasons, and we'll go through those as well. Medicaid's not for everybody, I'll be the first to tell you. When we can avoid it, there's some good reasons to do so. First of all is, when I say Medicaid, I'm talking about Medicaid for long-term care, for nursing home, okay? Medicare that you've paid into all of your working life is equivalent to like your hospitalization, primary care physicians, prescription drugs, what you would consider traditional insurance. The Medicare, though, that you've paid into is not a primary payor for long-term care services. Well, people will say, well, I get 100 days. No, you don't. You get 20 days at 80% coverage. You get 80 days at 20% coverage. The rest of that comes out of your pocket. And so when it exhausts itself, your pocketbook, Medicaid is the program administered through the state that will come in and pay for the nursing home, okay? But before you get to that point, please call somebody. Like Melva says, seek professional help, right? There's not, if you don't get anything else tonight from anybody, it's before you make a decision, call somebody, right? Because there's people out there, especially through this organization, who if they don't know the answer, they can get the answer or put you to people who may have the answer. But it's very important because there's a lot of things that can trip you up. But the reason why we may look at avoiding Medicaid altogether, right, there's some simple reasons too. A lot of people may still view that as a stigmatizing form of welfare, right? And they say, well, I'm not going to do that. And that's your right. That's absolutely a legitimate complaint, right? And we need to take that into consideration before we just shove it on somebody and force them onto a program they didn't want to be on. Because at the end of the day, there are strategies in place to preserve your money, but it's your money. And if you want to use that to make sure that you're well cared for, then that's what it's for. Because the other thing I'll tell you guys and everybody in this room is I get a lot of calls from the kids, right? Mom and dad's getting dementia or they're sick or they need to go to a home or whatever. And the kids and the parents don't always have the same interests in mind, right? Kids want to preserve the money because they want an inheritance. And mom or dad may want, you know, a new TV or a set of sheets or a massage or some hearing aids or some dentures or something that's going to improve their quality of life, right? And if somebody comes into my office, whether it's the kid or a spouse or whoever, that person who we're talking about getting benefits is the client. And I don't care what the kid wants. And so that's where we start from a planning standpoint. But let's get back to the top. I've chased enough rabbits, I guess. So why would we look to avoid Medicaid and maybe look to long-term care insurance? Well, Medicaid is very draconian, and unfortunately, it's the legal part of what I was talking about. And our legal system, including Medicaid, unfortunately, is the worst in the world, except for all the others. You know, that's kind of how you have to look at it. It's not good. So one of the things Medicaid requires is that before they will pay for care, you have to meet a medical necessity, okay, which is more than just help with what's called ADLs. In other words, you have to have a disease or condition that requires skilled nursing on a regular basis. If you just need help with, you know, remembering to take medication or getting dressed or making some meals or doing laundry, that is not going to be enough for Medicaid to say, yes, we'll pay for you to, you know, go to whichever nursing home you are looking at, right? On the alternative, if you just need help with ADLs, which is those activities of daily living, then long-term care insurance will pay for that, okay? What else does that mean? It also means that long-term care insurance will pay for assisted living facilities, not just nursing homes, right? It's very difficult, and there may be people who are very, knowledgeable in this room about the Medicaid program, and I'm not talking about STAR Plus waiver programs and trying to get people qualified for community-based alternatives and things to get Medicaid to pay for assisted living. That's a very difficult strategy. Whereas if you have long-term care insurance, it will just straight up pay. The other reason is because if you have long-term care insurance, quite frankly, you're likely buying better care, okay? So I can't tell you that these two things correlate, but what I can say is that statistically, when they did a study, so every nursing home that's out there has to provide, at a minimum, at least 4.1 hours of skilled nursing per resident per day, okay? As of 2002, which was a while ago now, but I've tried to update these figures and I couldn't really find them, there was 6% of all Texas nursing homes who met this requirement. Those 6%, well, I can't say it's the same 6%, but roughly 6% of all nursing homes were private pay only. In other words, they did not receive Medicaid dollars, right? Now, it just seems a little suspect, to me. Again, I can't say that they're the same 6%, but there's a good chance, right? So the reason why you are likely buying better care is because if you are utilizing long-term care insurance, then technically you are a private pay patient. And you have choice of facility, and you can use those insurance dollars as if you were writing them a check from your own bank account. And it gives you power of the purse, if you will, okay? So that's kind of the reasons why we would look at avoiding Medicaid, is some of the rigors from it. And so then the question becomes, if you could go another one, how would you plan with insurance, right? Well, don't just go to a broker without a little forethought, because unfortunately it seems like every door you open there's a few traps in this whole long-term care thing. Insurance salesmen, whatever you want to call them, brokers, it's not their fault, but they work on a commission, right? And the more insurance they can sell you, generally the more money they make. And quite frankly, the only thing that you need is kind of a worst case scenario. And the way we would build that out is to say, look, go to the next one if you would, and the next one. All right, so for a married couple, it's when one spouse stays at home and the other spouse has to go to a facility, right? And the reason why that's the worst case scenario is because you still have all of your expenses at the house, and then you've got this added necessary budget for the institutionalized spouse. So, can we go to the, yeah. Well, you can't see that. So the way we would look at it is we would take a projection of what your income is at retirement, less your normal expenses, right? And then throw on top of that the projected cost of a facility. Whatever your monthly deficit is, let's say that after all of those expenses, it's going to cost you $3,000 a month in savings for your husband or wife or whoever to get some care, then that's the amount of insurance you need, right? is the monthly deficit. You don't need to have necessarily the most expensive policy that you can get. Does that make sense? Right. So let's go to the next slide. Well, I thought I put one in there for... I tried to give you all some information. Yeah, go to the next one real quick. Some sample premium costs, so you can kind of average if you're calling around and you were shopping these kinds of things. So this was the national average based on $165,000 in policy value, meaning that it would pay out $165,000 over the course of your lifetime. For a single male, if you bought it at age 55, you're looking at an annual premium somewhere around $950. Now, these things generally increase 2 to 5% based on age brackets, not annually, but upon a tiered structure. Whereas the difference is, I know you can't hardly see this, but same policy, a single male at age 65, you're looking at about $1,700 an annual policy, okay? Still, it's a hedge on your bet, right? Because if you can get something that's going to pay out, again, your monthly deficit in budget up to $165,000 or however much that policy is, it really preserves the rest of your savings, right? The other thing that I would add to this category now is that if you are in a position where you do have a good amount of savings, the other thing that's worth investigating is a long-term care annuity product, whereas there may be a higher initial upfront premium. But for instance, let's say you buy in at $50,000, but in the event you go to a facility, it'll pay out 3 times the face value, okay? So they are a hedge against the rest of your financial resources. So that being said, that's kind of a brief overview of the insurance side. I'm going to turn to Medicaid for just a minute. I know that this is clear as mud to you, and I realize that. One of the hardest part of my jobs is like people will ask a question, especially about this, and it's by all means a simple question, but the answer's got a stack of books about this high behind it. And, you know, so trying to convey that into a, well, do this is the most difficult part. But anyway, so as I said before, Medicaid's not for everybody. Medicaid in Texas is administered by Texas Health and Human Resources Commission. Of the funds that are spent, roughly 39.44% are from the state and 60% are from the federal government. So there are many programs under Medicaid. What I'm going to be talking about primarily is just that for long-term care. And I'm going to try to do it as briefly as possible because we have 30 minutes. So let's go to the next one. I know it's hard to see. Medicaid is, of course, it's a government program. It comes with all the bureaucracy and everything you would expect with it. But essentially, you have to qualify, right? It's a resource and income-based program. That's why a lot of people characterize it as a form of welfare. But when it comes to nursing homes, it's actually a middle-class asset, if you want to look at it that way. And not just lower middle class, I mean upper middle class, right? But you do have to qualify. You have to be a U.S. citizen or a lawful resident alien. You have to be a resident of Texas. You have to be 65 years of age, blind or disabled. You have to have that medical necessity level of care. Your income for a single individual, as of 2019, these need to be adjusted a little bit. You have to make less than $2,241 a month in income for a single person and $4,410 for a married couple. As far as, here's the draconian thing and why I say this is a legal problem. In order for Medicaid to say, yes, I'll pay for your care, you have to have less than $2,000 in countable resources as of the first of the month for the month in which you go into a facility or hospital, right? So in other words, they make the threshold indigency, okay? And then they throw the surprise on you of, hey, you didn't plan for this. So the way the definition works in real life is this. Mom had a stroke. They called the ambulance and she went to the hospital, okay? And hospital says, you know what, she's going to pull through, but she needs to go to rehab. So they transfer mom to rehab and then to long-term care, okay? Well, you're thinking, well, she didn't go to the nursing home until like a month later. Well, they test their assets as of the first of the month for the month in which she went to the hospital way back here, right? So you take an emergency event and make that the trigger for when you test people's assets. That's the trap, right? You have to know it going in to be able to do anything about it, if you can, right? So it's the whole thing is just, you know, written by a bunch of sneaky politicians, right? That's yeah, how it works. If you make more, so how we have to meet each one of these criteria, right? And there's ways in which we can do it. So let's go to the next one. What if you make more than the income cap? That's okay. We can get you qualified, okay? There's things called an income trust or a Miller trust. And despite what you read on the internet, this is the only, you can write this down, this is the only Medicaid qualifying trust that there is, and it applies to income only. You cannot take and transfer your bank account or your house or your car or whatever to a trust and qualify for Medicaid. It will not work, okay? I promise. The next thing is, so what if you are over the income cap? What if our resources are over the limit? So go to the next one, yeah. There's several strategies. I don't expect you to remember all these strategies, and I don't advise you to do them by yourself. But there are gifting strategies, especially between spouses, okay? Because Medicaid does not consider a spouse between Medicaid does not consider a gift between one spouse to the other to incur a penalty for application purposes or for eligibility, okay? So we can deal with assets. We can also spend down to the extent that we need to. You can pay off debts, right? You can have a car. Listen, think about this. How does this make sense? You have to have less than $2,000 in countable resources, right? But you can have a car of unlimited value and it be excluded, right? So, I mean, if you wanted to just create some arbitrage and you've got 300 grand in the bank and you want to leave it to Johnny, your kid, go buy a $300,000 car and he can sell it when you're gone. Right? I'm not telling you to do that, but what I'm saying is how sometimes the rules make no sense, right? The other thing that I do advise people to do, though, if you're over limit in assets, then you do need to go ahead and take care of certain inevitable expenditures. You can have an irrevocable prepaid burial contract, for instance. That's not going to incur any penalty. A car, life insurance, things like that. So the other reason why it's important, if you're looking at, look, I've done all I can do. I've gotten to the point where, you know, we're really considering institutional care. how is this going to affect me? Am I still going to be able to, live and have food and be able to do things? Those are real questions, right? And the way it works is you can go, Medicaid assesses a copayment, and it's based upon people's income, all right? But there's some things that I want you guys to be cognizant of and to look out for, okay? Medicaid also incorporates what are called spousal impoverishment rules. In other words, they want to make sure that the spouse at home has at least a decent amount of income to not be destitute, right? But how it gets calculated, especially by local nursing homes, is improper. And I don't want to take up a whole lot more of your time, but I do want you to know about this because of the way it works. Listen, there is a magic number, right? And if, for instance, can y'all see this at all? Okay. So the co-payment formula is based upon both spouses' income to an extent. Can y'all still hear me? Okay. So whoever's going to the nursing home, you take their income and you subtract $60 because that's all they get to keep a month, right? And that gives you $940. And then the spouse's income gets added to that. This is the spouse at home. In this case, that spouse makes $2,000 a month, right? So they have a total income of $2,940, right? Well, you get to subtract this fancy MMMNA. That's the minimum monthly maintenance needs allowance for the spouse at home. That's $3,160. That's just what it is. Now it's like $3,165. In other words, in this example, there is no co-payment for this couple, right? For one of them to go to a facility. But what nursing homes do is inappropriate, because a lot of times they'll still either demand that $940 gets paid to them on a monthly basis until Medicaid kicks in, right, as a condition of an admission. Or what's more draconian is the next slide, which is completely wrong. So in this case, the spouse makes more than the $3,160. Do you see that? Okay. In this case, if the spouse makes more than the $3,160, then on that line where it says $5,000, they only count $3,160 up to that max, right? So they're adding income in here that they shouldn't even be trying to capture. And when you go to nursing facilities, a lot of times you meet with the admissions coordinator and they ask you for, your Social Security award letter and other pension payments and things like that. And they'll do a projected, we want all of her Social Security or all of Dad's Social Security except for $60, which we're going to put in our own patient trust fund that he can spend, right? Tell him to pound sand, right? Because that's wrong. And I'm not trying to speak ill. There's a lot of great nursing facilities. They do a wonderful job at a lot of them. But some of them flat don't. And part of your job as being a caregiver is ferreting that out. I'll be real honest with you. I had a client recently. We were going through a guardianship proceeding for this person. Guardianship is, I don't know if you know, but it's where you take full legal authority over another person's financial estate, everything, right? And part of that process is you have to make a legal finding that that person is incompetent. And this nursing home where this person was against their will as well, demanded that the applicant, they said, well, they haven't been found incompetent in court yet, so you need to bring us a check that we can have the patient sign over to us. Sure. We've got an application for a guardianship pending, and they know about it. These are the kind of people you're dealing with, okay? So that's what I'm saying. You got to watch yourself. I can't really harp on that enough, I guess. But anyway, if they try to give you a hard time about this rule too, so just point them to the next slide. In their own handbook is J7000, income for eligibility and copayment. It explains the rule right there to you. Keep going if you would. Sometimes I just put this. Here's the other frustrating thing you'll find is if you ever actually go through this process, you file an application, you do everything you're supposed to do, and then what they don't tell you is that you also have to educate the people who run this program, right? So that's part of how that goes. All right. The other big thing that's scary is they'll say, well, can Medicaid take my house? Well, yes and no, okay? If you don't take any action and mom or dad ends up on Medicaid, there is such thing as Medicaid Estate Recovery Program. Texas doesn't like it, but it had to impose it in one of the omnibus bills that got passed in Congress and the federal government, because the feds told us, look, you're either going to do this program or we're going to quit giving you money, and we got to have the money. And that happened in 2003. But here's the thing that you need to know. It's easy to circumvent the rule, okay? So go forward another one. Medicaid can only put a claim on someone's probate estate, okay? That means that if, your house, unfortunately, let me ask you this. Y'all have a will? Right, most of you do. Okay, and if you go on Medicaid, if your house passes to your beneficiaries by virtue of a will, then that is a probate asset. Okay, if it passes outside of a will, outside of probate, then that's a non-probate asset. Right. So in order to avoid this, you want your house to pass not by your will, okay? Everybody, generally that's a good thing, and we want to have a will, and you do want to have a will, but you don't want your house to pass under that will if you need to get benefits from the state of Texas, okay? So talk to somebody about that. There's ways around it. You can do a transfer on death deed. You can do a ladybird deed. You could, in certain circumstances, just deed it over before you pass away. There's things that we can do, but there's really no need to not plan ahead for this one right here, because this is something you should consider even if you never use Medicaid. Right. If you know you're going to keep your house, or even if you don't want to keep it, you're going to sell it. But if you generally know who you want to receive your house when you pass away, then we'd look at doing either a vesting on death deed or a ladybird deed. Okay. Let's go to the next one. Lastly, I just want y'all to understand you shouldn't have any, concern, at least not right now, over worrying about whether your kids are going to have to pay your medical expenses, okay? So Texas does not have any what's called a filial obligation. In other words, your kids are not responsible for your medical bills when you pass away, all right? There are states that do have that, but right now Texas does not, and I don't foresee that changing anytime soon, to the extent that you don't sign yourself up for it, okay? So on this last slide, I want you to understand that, look, the law prohibits a nursing home to condition admittance upon a third-party guarantor, all right? But they're going to try to get you to be a responsible third party for whoever you're looking to put in a nursing home. They do it very sneakily and slyly and just as a matter of course, and they're going to give you a stack of documents about that thick. And in there, buried somewhere, very well may be that you're agreeing to be a third-party payor for whoever's getting admitted. That is, they can't deny admission based upon you saying, no, I'm not going to do that. And I'm telling you, don't do it, because you don't have a filial obligation, okay? I think that's just about it that I have. And yeah, so as always, it's been a pleasure. I'm sorry I didn't bring a card with me today because I got a call at about 4:45 that my wife was in a car accident, so you can blame it on her. They're all okay though, so we're good. Yeah, we're going to be thankful for that. But I had to come talk to you guys anyway. And so I will see you next time, I'm sure, if you'll have me. And it's been good. So if y'all have any questions, you can feel free to reach out. These wonderful people have our phone numbers and contact information. If y'all want it, you can write it down. It's 903-455-1991. Kelly is my assistant. She's wonderful, and be happy to talk to any of you anytime. Thanks. So.
I think we actually have some of your brochures out on the table from a previous time that you were with us. So if anybody needs that, I think they're out there. And guys, in a previous life, I worked for Adult Protective Services, and I can't stress enough that it is never too early to start thinking about planning for the future, planning for, long-term care, a nursing home stay. I mean, I just can't even tell you how many of the cases that we got at Adult Protective Services that was an emergency happened, mom went to the doctor, and now you have to scramble to figure out how to get her taken care of. You don't have to know all of these answers, but it is never too early to start looking for those answers and planning for the future. I know this is not a very exciting thing to think about, and Medicaid, even for people who work Medicaid, is complicated and confusing. So if you're walking away more confused than you came in, that's okay. Just if you can take away one thing from all of that, it is that it is a complicated process, so it is never too early to start thinking about it and exploring your options. So we are going to jump into our third presentation on palliative care. Hospice? Okay. So this is Ida Whiteman. She is from Centric Home Health. She's been working in the post-acute care market for 16 years, developing training programs for hospitals and doctors' offices, and providing leadership in developing clinical programs in various markets in North Texas. She is a licensed nurse. She was licensed as a nurse 7 years ago and has been navigating nurse-patient relationships with a focus on wound care. Before joining Centric Home Health and Hospice, she managed patient care for the Visiting Nurses Association, providing hospice care to patients in the Denton area. I just read that very terribly. Ida serves as the Assistant Director of Operations for a 2-state hospice operation, overseeing patient care. So this is Ida from Centric on hospice.
Okay, I'm going to move this. I was told one time that nobody would know how tall you were if you didn't tell them, but y'all can tell that's not real tall. So I got to make this work for me so you can hear me. Wow, that's not it. There we go. I don't want it to fall. A fun fact about me, I used to travel and speak all over Texas and up into some other states, and in the church. So kind of being behind this kind of feels like home. So if I attempt to take up a tithe and offering at the end, just excuse that. Anyway, thank you guys for having me. I know that today talking about all of the things that we're here to talk about is not fun, and I'm here to talk about hospice and palliative care, which is, it's kind of my heartbeat. I don't see it as something that is necessarily a negative thing, but a source to people and my calling in this world. It took me 20 years to get to where I am, that I know that I'm doing what I was placed here to do. So I speak from a hospice heart that loves to give back to people. And people that give to those that have Alzheimer's and dementia, caregivers that take their days to care for those loved ones. Let me say thank you, because I know that it's not easy. What you get up every day and you face it makes you take a deep breath. And I have to tell you a story before I get started on my hospice and palliative care talk, because kind of tell you where I started in helping people with dementia. I was set with my patients, and I was supposed to go to a memory care facility. And I would go to that place a couple of times every week, and I would see my patients, and I wouldn't understand why I needed to go there. Now, I'm a nurse, and I'm pretty trained in what the disease process for dementia is, but I didn't understand the why and how I could really meet someone's needs where they were, because what was I really doing for them? I was taking their blood pressure, I was coming in, and I was going, and I really wasn't doing anything. And I had expressed it to one of my coworkers who told me I needed to go take a trip and sit in a seminar on Alzheimer's. And so I drove down and I sat for a day and I listened to a woman's heart that ran a nonprofit that talked about how I could be a better caregiver as a nurse and talk to different caregivers, much like this operation is doing here. And the nuggets that I got, I decided I was going to take it back, and I was going to sit at the feet of this person, and I was going to use a few tricks with her along that day. I had found that I went to this specific place during their activities because they were all centered in one room, and I could really meet all of my people and get in and get out as quick as I thought I could. That was my goal. This particular day, a man was dropped off at this facility. He didn't live there, but his daughter, who was 85 years old because he was 100, walking and talking, brought in a case with him and sat the case down, and his daughter needed him to stay there for a little while so she could get some rest. He sat down and they started playing their activities, and music was going in the background. My patient that I had at this point, she was very advanced in her disease process, and her arms were folded in. She was in a wheelchair and her body was bent over, and she never looked at me. She didn't talk. She would rock every once in a while, and I can tell when she didn't want me to touch her because she would pull back. But she was very inward to herself, and I really didn't know how to meet her needs. I barely could get a blood pressure on her. But somewhere along that day, during that time, a lady asked that man, "Why don't you go get your box?" He said, "What box?" "Well, the box you brought with you." So she brings this box to him, and she opens it up, and inside of it was a violin. And she said, "Do you want to play?" And he says, "My mama's been trying to get me to play this violin. I don't really know that I'm that good at it." "Well, why don't you pick it up and play it anyway?" So he stands up, kicks the chair out from behind him, grabs that violin and looks at it, takes one little hit, didn't really sound good, and then the next moment it started to play the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. Because he was classically trained, and what his moment was brought back into music. And he's playing, and I'm crying, and all the people in the room that knew what was happening was crying as well. But the residents were just sitting there. They weren't really fazed by it. I thought it was the most beautiful thing I had heard. So he stops midway and says, "Y'all don't like that? Well, how about this?" In the middle of July, he starts playing Jingle Bells on his violin, and the place erupts. And for the duration of that song, every single person in that room came alive. And they started singing, and they started clapping, and they started dancing. And I turned around, and my sweet little lady, who had been closed in, head down, nonverbal, turned out. Hands extended, smile on her face, and she sang for the first time I had ever heard her sing. First words that ever came out of her mouth. They played that song so beautifully, and they sang. And I was given an opportunity to look past, to look inside, and to see who was standing before me. I was given a gift. When the song was over, she went back into herself, as did much the rest of the people in the room. And I knew at that moment that was my opportunity to see what I could really do for them. If I could just see past what was standing in front of me and see into her heart, I would know that she was really there. And from that moment on, I took that for my patients, and that was my goal. In every single patient that I take care of, was to see past their current situation to the heart of who they really are. And to me, that's what palliative care really is. It's the whole person. You can move this slide now, because I'm going to begin. I promise to keep it as short and sweet like me as I can, okay? We want to take care of the whole person, where they at, their mind and their body and their spirit, because the goal of palliative and hospice care is to have the best quality of life for where we're at. Not where we're going, but in this moment. And the idea of palliative care is a bridge. So many people come in and they're suffering and they just need support. Sometimes they may be on home health, or they may not have anybody at all, and they're just going to their doctors, and they need a little bridge of time, somebody to help them along the way. And that's why we're here. We come in and we meet with their families, and we meet with them, and we ask them certain things. The biggest thing that we always ask is, what is your goal? What do you want? What do you want with the rest of the time that you have, whatever time that might be? So many times people think that hospice, palliative care, means the end of life. Well, what about where we are? There's that moment of life, of active life, and then there's the moment of the exclamation mark that we're going to get you to. But palliative care is the in-between. What do we do with that? It's a philosophy. It is a system that we deliver care, but it's really wrapped around you. What do you need? Not just the patient, but the caregiver as well. We want to meet with the families, and we want to go, what is it that you want? How does the rest of your time look? Because that's what we're going to form it around. Palliative care is the focus for comfort. You can go to the next slide. Symptom management and pain relief. We all want to be pain-free. Pain-free doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to give you all the medications and that's what we're going to keep you pain-free. Pain-free sometimes means, let me sit with you and let me help you, because it might be a matter of the heart. And that's what we do. You've probably already experienced palliative care in your everyday life if you've ever broken a bone. You go to the doctor and we put a cast on and we might give you something for pain. The cast is the curative. The medication is the palliative. It's the part that helps you. It gets you to recover. When your patient or your family member is battling an illness, you battle with them. And it's fatigues people so much. So when you bring people in like hospice care, we rally around you so that we take the load off. That's what people do that bring in. We want to lessen the load and lessen the stress so that we can take one thing from you, that you can just know for maybe a little bit of time while we're in the home, you don't have to be on. and you can get more rest, and you can get more sleep, and you can have more quality time being that patient's husband or daughter, and you can be present instead of always having to be the one that cares for. You're going to always care. We like to use palliative care, like I said, as a bridge. Sometimes you can have it in conjunction with home health. You're not really ready to go to the big H word that's kind of scary because nobody wants to say hospice, because we might be giving up. Hospice is not about giving up. It's about adding to what you've already got. And palliative care sometimes comes in and we rally with you until you're ready. So you can still go get your aggressive treatments. You can still go to your doctors, and we can still be present, and we can still help you by adding extra people in your home that's going to help you make decisions, that's going to stand beside you. We like to have an effective pain management. We like to incorporate all types of things in that, what your values and beliefs are, things that you want to see done. How does that look for you? We come in and we evaluate the treatment of what you might need, and we center it around you. Always remember, what is your goal? When you sign up and you come into home health and hospice and palliative care, you get to take back your health care. You get to write the rules, because what's left is up to what you want. So when I sit with my people and I ask them, what is it that you want? You don't want to take your medicines. You don't want to go to the doctor. You don't want to go to the hospital. You want to stay in your home, wherever that home might be. That's what we want to do for you. The difference between palliative and hospice, there's really not a lot of differences, because we're going to do the one and the same. Palliative kind of rolls into a hospice mindset. You still get comfort and care. You just may not be as aggressive in it because we're tired. Sometimes we need people to say it's okay. It's okay to stop fighting so aggressive. It's okay to stop and let God be God, and stand in a moment and let us walk you through what you need. And that's when the hospice side of it kicks in, that we can help you to stay in your environment. We have patients and families that come together. We have an interdisciplinary team that comes, that we address all issues. With that interdisciplinary team, you get a hospice physician that's certified in hospice, that knows the mindset of where you are. You get a registered nurse like me. Sometimes you get an LVN that we team up together, that you're going to get to see our smiling faces a couple of times a week. And you get this amazing aide that's going to come in and care for you and bathe you and be that need that sometimes you can walk away, that you don't want to bathe dad, so you have someone that can come in and bathe dad for you. You also have a social worker, which is probably my favorite part of what hospice does, because they're able to reach people that help you and get your Medicaid, or help to get things in the community that are going to benefit you in the long run. If staying home is no longer an option, you can go to a long-term care facility, and our social workers are in the home present, helping you reach that. And we also have chaplains that come in and pray with you and seek your spiritual needs. We also have grief support for when a loved one's gone. A year after your loved one passed, we offer a support system with our bereavement program. Medicare and other private insurances will pay for the treatments that you might have, the medications when you come on hospice. We like to give you a lot of things. We like to give you ourselves, and we like to say, okay, now that you come on to hospice, we're going to take things for you. We're going to give you your medications, and we're going to pay for them. You no longer have to go out and get them. We're going to get them for you. And just because you come on hospice does not mean that you stop all your medications and you no longer get to do the things. Like I said, we're going to gear it around what you want. You also get your supplies taken care of so that you don't have to go back to the store and keep buying mom things for her personal care. So we can provide all of this in a home setting because so many times people just, that's where they want to be. No one wants to end their life in a hospital bed in a hospital, but in the home sounds pretty good. The Medicare funded in 1983 changed in 97, so today's coverage of hospice benefits changed, and you get benefit periods. You must be terminally ill. You must meet, the doctor must say that within the last 6 months, or in 6 months, you could possibly be terminally ill within that 6 months time. So we take markers of times of benefit periods, is what we call them, in 90-day increments. Then it moves to 60 days. And as long as you still meet that terminal diagnosis, then you can still remain on hospice care. The doctor comes in and he will decide that you fit the criteria. Then a nurse will go out and assess the patient, and that's kind of how it has started. Through therapy services, like I said, aids, it all falls under the hospice benefit, which is the benefit that Medicare gives you. So many people don't know that when they have Medicare, that that's a benefit that comes to the end of it. So we have our team, we have our benefit package, and also things that they wanted me to talk about was veterans benefits. You can also, if you're a veteran, you can always use your Medicare part on hospice to have that covered. Sometimes they will elect to use that instead of being in a VA hospital. Sometimes when they come home, they can use that there. I'd already talked a little bit, but this next slide kind of goes over a little bit about what our team is. I think I went a little bit fast and went through some of them. You can kind of go. There it is. So this is really what you get when you sign up. I already kind of talked about a little bit. We also have volunteers. Volunteers in hospice is the amazing thing. If you've ever thought about being able to give back and you want to do something and you have you can crochet blankets or you can make caps, we're always looking for people that want to come and sit or they want to give back. It's one of the things that we also offer as a way for caregiver relief. What makes you eligible for hospice care? There's a lot of different things. When you go into it and the doctor's going to come in and look and you're going to say, what is it that might make me eligible? Or I might have a loved one that I think could benefit. If you've had lots of weight loss, uncontrolled increased pain, the person may be more withdrawn or confused and bedbound, lots of weakness and fatigue, difficulty breathing, oxygen use, aggressive renal insufficiency, or progressive, I'm sorry, and lots of edema or lots of infections. We also do wound care, which, like you said before, I really like wounds. Don't get me started talking on that. I will be here all night. So, failure to respond to any medical treatment, or quite frankly, not wishing to seek medical treatment anymore. Those are things that are markers that might say, hey, I think I might be ready to have a talk. I would always tell people, too, that if a doctor or a loved one or anyone says, I think maybe we need to have time to talk, like he said before, don't make any decisions until you talk to someone. If you look at your loved one and you think, I need a little extra help, hospice is not about matters of death and dying, but it's a matter of the heart. Hospice sometimes at the end allows people to come together, the team, the family, to sit at the bedside of their loved one and help them to make that exclamation mark at the end. That's really what we like to do. It gives time. It gives things back to people that they might have lost. Sitting at the foot of the bed of someone that's about to pass is hallowed ground. And being able to be a part of that when someone passes is an amazing opportunity. One thing that I have found that it brings families together. Sometimes if there was things that needed to be forgiven or things that needed to be said, when you opt to come back home and sit and take the time together, hearts can be mended. and time together, while it may seem short, is amazing. If you're thinking that you might want to explore hospice for your family members, I want to tell you that no decision that you make going forward is the wrong one. Because if you make it out of love, it'll always be the right decision. That's all that I have today. Thank you guys for letting me come and speak just a little bit. Again, I'm with Centric Hospice, so if you have any questions or comments that you would like, just please feel free. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you to all of our speakers, Melva, Shawn, who I think stepped out, and Ida. Just a couple of quick takeaways from our first speaker. Don't fall victim to the stigma of Alzheimer's. You're not alone in this. If you need support, it's out there. It's never too early to start exploring your options to plan for the future. It's complicated, so don't put it off. And then, and I used to tell people this all the time, and when I worked for APS, hospice doesn't mean you're giving up or it's the end of the world. It's about quality of life. It really is about making your loved one comfortable as you can. So, I wanted to invite everyone to our next seminar. That'll be our third in the 4-part series. And so that will be Saturday, July 10th at 10 a.m., right back in here. We have 2 speakers that day. We have a speaker who will be speaking on the stages of Alzheimer's, some just specifics about how the disease progresses and some markers of each progression of the disease. And then a neurologist from Frisco will be talking about advances in medicine and in testing for Alzheimer's. So I don't know if anybody else is into that kind of thing, but it's very interesting to see kind of how, what the research is finding and the advancements they're making in testing and stuff like that. Someone is waving at me. And for June, that would be next Wednesday. So next Wednesday at 12, you are invited to a concert and lunch on us at the Texan. Yes. So everyone is invited to our next series. We hope you enjoyed this one. And again, if you have any questions, you need support, or just a person to talk to, any of us at RFM are here for you. And I have another person waving at me.
I just want to remind everyone that we in Greenville, we have 2 groups, one in Quinlan and one in Greenville. If you are in the Greenville area, ours meets on the 2nd Thursday of every month at 6 p.m. at the Seniors Building on Lee Street. And we'd love to have you. We have each quarter we try to focus on 3 things. One, we want to let you talk and tell us what's going on with you. Another one, we have speakers, and then we have fun night. We play bingo or just whatever comes to mind. And you want to say what this is our Quinlan representative. She'll tell you where and when.
I'm Sue Haney. Ours is at the Quinlan Church, Methodist Church in Quinlan. And we meet on the second Monday of every month, and it's at 10 o'clock. And we'd be glad to have anybody come. We really put an emphasis on letting you discuss your problems and what you're facing and sharing, so that we can help each other with this. And we'd love anybody to
All right, I think that is all we have. There's all sorts of information out on the table from us and from Centric, I believe. So y'all feel free to grab that. And thanks everybody for coming, and hopefully we will see you in a couple of weeks.